Welcome to Business Talk Sister Gawk. I'm Becca, and today's podcast episode title is How to Start a Coffee Roasting Business. And with me today, I have Josh Lindstrom. Thank you so much for being with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Yeah, from Fika Coffee. And some of you may have heard of this business already because I think, Josh, you do a fantastic job with your branding. But tell me a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so we are a coffee roaster retailer. So we roast coffee and then we also have a coffee shop. And then we sell that roasted coffee either wholesale to different coffee shops, grocery stores, places like that. And then we have an online presence as well. So I kind of look at it as a three-legged stool. So we have the revenue from the coffee shop, from the wholesale, and then from the retail online. Yeah.
Yeah, you have quite a few things going on. And how did you decide that this is what you wanted to do? Like, what's your why?
What's my why? Well, I think, I mean, maybe even to like kind of preface this, like you asked me what I do, and I should have responded another way, but what we do is we cultivate beauty through our work. So we are a mission, vision, and values based business. So that means that we have a mission, and our mission is to cultivate beauty through our work, and that mission is something we do each day that we come into work. And then we have that vision, which is this long term kind of thing that we're shooting for. And then we have our values, which support our day to day work. But that's kind of like what we do. But um, I would say I'm kind of doing this because we're located in a very beautiful place of the world and of the state of Minnesota, and that's up on the rugged, rocky North Shore. We're up in Lutsen, Grand Marais area, so we're sandwiched in between Canada, which there's over 1 million acres of wilderness in Canada right to the north, and then we have Lake Superior right to our south, and that's kind of where we're at. So as this place is a difficult place to live. It's difficult to find meaningful employment that pays well and that provides year-round work. It's also a difficult place to live to find a home to rent, let alone a home that you can afford to buy. So, growing up, my experiences, I was born in Grand Marais. My parents moved away for a lot of the same difficulties that are still present. So, kind of the why behind this business is in 2004, I had the idea of, oh man, I could roast coffee and create a product up on the North Shore and ship it down the highway. And I could maybe carve out, um, a life for my family here. And then hopefully also then that grew into, hey, I could actually probably create some opportunities for a couple more employees as well. So that's another aspect of why we're doing this is we're trying to come up with a traditional, non-traditional, new entrepreneurial way to do business and to provide meaningful work here.
Yeah, no, so it sounds like what you are doing in your community is actually a creative way to just be local and be where you want to live. And you found that through roasting coffee. Am I correct there?
Yep, you are correct.
So tell me a little bit about that backstory of you deciding to take that leap of moving there. What, were you there first doing other stuff before you decided to do the coffee roasting? Because just so you know, in my family, you're pretty legendary for like living with like no running water and like off the grid kind of thing. And that's like what I've heard anyways, but maybe you can expand on that.
Yeah, well, it's not too uncommon to live without running water up here. But full disclosure, we've had running water now for quite some time. But
Okay.
I mean, a little bit of my coffee background in college. I worked at a Dumb Brothers, so that's kind
Okay.
of where I first saw coffee being roasted and had the experience of being in a coffee shop. Um, and then my wife and I, we got married in October of 2004. And about maybe a month before our wedding, I said to my wife, "What would you think about going to Alaska for the winter?" Um, and there was an opportunity for me to be a dog handler for a musher up there. So she agreed to that. And so 3 days after we got married, we drove
Okay.
up to Alaska. And I kind of joked because we took the long way to Alaska. And that means that we just drove straight across the United States from west to Oregon. And then we kind of went up the coast and then we had to veer back east a little bit to get the Alaskan highway. But, anyways, we spent the winter there. And then in May of 2005, we moved back to Grand Marais because at that time I had a family cabin here. So we knew we could come have a house at the cabin to live at. And then we both got serving jobs that summer. And my wife is a school teacher. So we thought that she would get a job, that summer, and then we would probably move somewhere closer to the cities. But this is still 2005, so a lot of the baby boomers they were still working, so it was actually pretty difficult to get a teaching job then.
Hmm.
So, yeah, in the fall of 2005, we're living in that family cabin. Next thing we know is we're buying firewood to stay in Grand Marais. Yeah, so like at that cabin we lived at, there was no running water there. There's an outhouse poured out, but
Super expensive. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so we're gonna keep going with like how you got off the ground because all right, you got this place that you guys are living in and you're up in Grand Marais. Um, what did that look like to start getting equipment and getting stuff in order to start testing how to roast?
yeah. So for 2 years, we left Minnesota. We went to Muncie, Indiana, and it was this alternative seminary internship. And it was like ministry classes in the morning, and then it was coffee roasting in the afternoon. And it was all funded by this coffee roasting place. So we spent 2 years there, and that's where I got a lot of training on espresso and coffee roasting. And then we moved back up to Grand Marais in like August or September of 2011. And right away, I reached out and I started to work with the Northeast Entrepreneurial Fund.
Hmm.
So they're a nonprofit that provides, people like myself or whoever has an idea and you want to build a business plan, they provide you with a business consultant. Um, so that first fall and winter, we worked with our business consultant. And fun little side story, our business consultant at that time was Nicole Wild, who now owns and operates Love Creamery in
Okay.
Duluth.
Mm-hmm.
So she would make the drive up from her home into Harbors, come and meet us, helped us do the business plan. And then it kind of just got to that point where it's like, all right, like we need some money to start, you know, buying things. And it's like, well, what are we going to do? And asking for money is a really difficult thing to do for, I think, the majority of people. And we don't like come from parents that have a lot of money, or, I didn't have anyone in their circle where I knew like had some of that money. So we got um, someone gave us $15,000, no strings attached. And they said, yeah, like you can use this. I mean, if we went out and buy a new car, they wouldn't shame us for that. But the intent was for roasting. So I took 10,000 of that 15,000 and put that down on our Dietrich IR12 roaster, which we still have to this day. And that was 50% down, which you need to do to get them start building that roaster. And then in June of 2012, the roaster showed up, and I took my personal credit card and paid the other remaining 10,000 on that roaster. So, and then we moved that roaster into a 90 square foot shed on this family property. I took out the lawnmower and the shovels and painted the floor and insulated the walls and put a metal roof on, put a window in there. And that became our first little roaster in the woods.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about like what you had to do for kind of certifications, or are you under something like the US Department of Ag, or what does that look like for you?
Yep. So that first year from like June of 2012 to roughly June of 2013, I kind of just operated under the cottage industry
Okay.
license and just did the farmers market. I had a roaster to door service where I drove around the county and brought people their coffee. But then after that year, I did get my wholesale license through the Department of Ag. And in that move, so up in for that first year, we also like packaged all of our coffee in this little tiny shed. But then we rented out time at our community center where there's a licensed and like certified kitchen there.
Mm-hmm.
So we reserved a morning there each week. We were able to store some packaging equipment there as well. So then that kind of allowed us for me to get my license through the Department of Ag. So we still would roast everything in the cabin, but then bring it in buckets down to the community center. And that's when we started our local wholesale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that that process is like super helpful for people to understand because a lot of people think, well, I just need to like build out this commercial kitchen and my startup costs are going to be so high. That's not necessarily true. There's a lot of commercial kitchens available that you can get time in that you don't have to own it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's even becoming popular with coffee roasting. There's coffee roasting co-ops now, and there's one in the cities I know of where they have all the packaging equipment. You can store green beans
Mm-hmm.
there. You rent time on, one of their three or four roasters, so that really allows people to kind of start. And I think too, like we just started really small and slow, and, my business plan was not to start in the shed, but I think having a business plan allowed me to move forward. And I looked at every kind of option of a building and space and nothing came up.
Mm-hmm.
But then it just allowed, like, with just having a $10,000 loan, which I eventually got a bank to cover that credit card loan and then had a bank loan, but that's was very manageable. So I didn't have a lot of overhead and expenses that it didn't add a lot of stress on me, allowed me to kind of continue to learn roasting into roasting and kind of build the culture
Mm-hmm.
of the business without the pressure of trying to make loan payments.
Mm-hmm.
So it was that very like slow growth, with the long game in mind, but allowed me to focus on building a solid foundation to kind of build the business on.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what did you do to figure out what kind of green beans to buy, and how did you source that for your business?
Yeah, so one, I mean, it kind of came my time in being in Muncie was the first time that I really saw people buying green beans. So I think from that time, I knew of a couple different exporters or importers I could reach out to. But in Minnesota, we're fortunate enough to have Cafe Imports, which is a coffee roaster. Like they import green coffee and they've been around a very long time. They import really nice coffee and they have, yeah, so it's just very helpful to have them here. So I was able to drive down there at that time, meet my sales rep, cup coffees with him and kind of just start that relationship. Um, so that's kind of how that went. And then a lot of it was just kind of like word of mouth, or like maybe you would be at a coffee event and you would come across another importer or someone else who had a coffee that I liked. So I would ask them, like, where did this coffee come from? And then I would kind of follow that lead.
Okay. Yeah. And tell me a little bit about, it seems like once you got off the ground, you're like, I'm going to deliver this by hand, keep to that cottage industry standard and everything. But in the meantime, like, did you have signups for that at the farmer's market to grow that and build those relationships?
Yep. Yeah. So the first 4 years of our business, every Saturday morning I was at that farmer's market and we were selling bags, selling drip that grew to like even doing espresso our last year. But there'd be signups there. I did some other like local community events and tastings too to invite people to. Um, and then it kind of would be just be word of mouth as well to grow that roaster to door. But that was kind of modeled after the milkman, I guess, um, where at that point I had two kids at home and they would be riding in the back of the car with dad, and we'd be driving all over the town and in the county down roads, and people's long driveways. And if they weren't home, they trusted me to walk in with a can of full coffee, and I would set that on the counter and grab the can of that had no coffee in that. Yeah, so that was a really special time, I think, just doing all that hard work and having all those people that were the roaster to door because they are the ones who really allowed me to be roasting coffee year round those first couple of years.
Yeah. Well, and okay, so you have mentioned a couple things that I want to go back to that I think would be valuable. So one, you said that you went to a place that was like a ministry where you learned how to roast coffee. What was the name of that?
So I don't, it was Muncie Alliance Church, and I I don't know if there's a name for the internship. If there was, no one talked about it because it didn't stick with me. But
Okay, so it's not like something people could go out and find and register for a
yeah.
class.
And
Okay.
it is, I want to say it maybe started like in the early 2000s or like 99 around there. And then it's no longer going. So when I was there, it was a 2 year program that you went through.
Okay.
And we were there like the second to last kind of 2 year cycle that it did. Um, but people like for us, they provided a house for my family to live in. They provided a small stipend. And then each day, or Monday through Friday, we had our classes in the morning. And, in this church, was a coffee bar in there. So the pastor sold coffee equipment. That was also his job on the side. And then they also sold like drink mixes and things like that to coffee shops.
Hmm.
So then he was like, well, I'm already selling espresso machines. I might as well like sell these coffee shops, also sell them roasted coffee too. So that's kind of how that grew. But in the morning we'd go to class and then we all would have lunch together as a group afterwards. And if you had a family, they would come and partake of that lunch. And then some of the students worked in the coffee roasting and some had their own jobs or own things going on. Um, yeah, so I did that for 2 years.
Okay. Wow.
And
What an exceptional opportunity. I just have to say that, like, because that seems like fantastic. So then the other thing you mentioned is that you had someone that approached you and said, I'm going to give you this money to like fund your business. And do you think that that came about because you were sharing your dream and vision and somebody said, I align with what you're doing and I want to support that?
yeah, that's probably 100%. I mean, what it was, and I think also they were, being faithful to, you know, something inside them that told them to also to do that. So when they gave that money, like I said, there was no strings attached. They and till this day they don't want to for people to know who it was. Um, and if there was a string attached, there was two. One was they wanted coffee, whenever they wanted it, but as it turns out, they hardly ever ask for coffee. It's more me being remindful to bring them a bag or two. Um,
Okay.
and then also the
Yeah.
second one was like they wanted to pass for me to pass that opportunity on. And that is an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity that, I'm now like, I think I can now make that gift for someone. So it's kind of, it's definitely on my radar, but I haven't really thought about that yet, kind of almost just waiting to see, when in the next few years or sometime when I see a local business person working hard, investing, and then maybe that will spark that idea like, hey, let's give them a helping hand. Because I think in business, I mean, a helping hand is always, great. And whether that helping hand has strings attached or no strings attached, or if just someone comes up and recognizes, hey, I see your hard work and I want to give you a loan at a low interest rate, or yeah,
Yeah. No, and I think that that's a valuable piece of information that most entrepreneurs don't realize is like hard work is honored by other
yeah,
people who appreciate hard work. And um, I think that's a huge tip that nobody thinks about. Yeah, so we're going to continue this conversation in regards to what's going on with your like capital campaign and all the stuff you guys are doing because you have so many people working for you now and all this stuff, and we want to talk about that. We're going to do that in the next episode. But how about you tell me how people can find you?
yeah. Sorry, I was gonna joke and like find me personally. But yeah, so one on our website, fikacoffee.com, we have a newsletter on there, and I write a newsletter once a quarter. And that's a really good way. So sign up for that newsletter on the website. And that's a really good way to kind of hear my heart. I do most of the writing, but sometimes I will have other guests or employees also write, but we kind of share a lot of like kind of what's going on within the culture of Fika. So that's a great place. And then Instagram would be the one other like social media place that we're fairly active on. I mean, we're more active now because of our fundraising campaign. But if you message us on there, we can reach out. Um, that does like link over to Facebook, although we never go into Facebook. So if you message us or say something
Don't
on
expect
Facebook,
a
we might not.
response.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you for that. And we're going to transition to the gawk portion of this episode. And I'm gonna tell you a quick story. So this is me like just also sharing a little bit about how cool your brand is, I think, because I think you guys have done a really good job with that intentionality of your culture and what you try to create with your coffee. And like you have like a really good brand that goes with that in terms of quality. And I actually was going to get my hair cut the other day, and my hairstylist was like, "Well, what do you got going on this week?" And I said, "Actually, I'm going to do a podcast interview with Fika Coffee." And she knew exactly who you guys were. And she lives like over an hour away from you. And she was like, "Yeah, actually, you should ask them about their sponsored races because they have these really cool to-go coffee tea bags for hiking, and I keep them in my car and I love them." And so tell me a little bit of how you got into that because I think that's super interesting.
Yeah. Um, well, I would think like that hairstylist talking, like that is the greatest kind of marketing that we can all have and invest in. Um, we don't do a lot of paid advertisement, but I love it when people come up to the coffee shop and they're like, oh yeah, my hairstylist or my dentist or my neighbor heard I was coming up the North Shore and they told me to stop here. Like that's gold right there.
It
But
really
there
is.
is, like a couple of motivations for Fika is we love adventure, community, and coffee. And I'm a runner of sorts. I ran a little bit in high school and college, and I love being out in the woods and on the trail and trail running. So there is spring trail races and then fall trail races up here. In the fall, there's a marathon, a 50 miler, and a 100 miler. So anyone who's I think going for a run in general is like being adventurous in spirit. So I just resonated a lot with those. So we provide coffee for both of those running races. They brew it up at all the aid stations. Um, there's a big bike race up here in Lutzen called the Lutzen 99er, which has like over 2,000 mountain bikers, and we provide coffee for that event as well. Yeah, but we have our little single steeped coffee bags, and that's kind of our answer to the question of do you have a K cup? Like, do you have a single serve, something quick? So it's our North Shore blend that's in essentially a tea bag. And as your hairstylist said, it's perfect to keep in your glove box. It's great to take on a hiking or on a camping trip into the Boundary Waters. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I'm super excited about that. Well, thank you for joining me today for this episode. I've really enjoyed having you as a guest.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's kind of fun. I know we talked before about not having the camera on. It's really weird, like not to see and talk because I feel like I have a cup of coffee here, and usually when I'm talking in coffee, I can like read, the face or whatever. But
Yeah,
this is
audio
awesome.
audio quality is better this way if we're doing it
Yeah.
remotely. So, yeah, well, if you have enjoyed this episode, you should give it a review on wherever you are listening and listen to the next episode also with Josh from Fika Coffee because we're going to be talking about his capital campaign, what it is, and how to use it. So, we'll see you in the next episode.